Okay, welcome everyone. This is our second May event for Lean Agile Delivery Coaching Network and Digital Transformation in London. Today we have Piotr Trojanowski. I hope that I pronounce it correctly, that has a preview, a very interesting preview actually. So I'm really curious to listen, Piotr. As usual, just a couple of information from me. This is the last event before the summer break. Actually, this is June event, not May event. Sorry, I have to correct. And we already have a plan for September when the new season will restart. So I will publish the September event in very quickly this week, and it will be another very interesting talk from a speaker that actually is calling us from Canada. So no surprise, and I don't want to ruin the surprise. You will see and you will receive the notification. So today we have Piotr that is here to share his own talk that he is going to present next week to a very important event, but I will leave the stage to Piotr so he can introduce himself and the session. Thank you, Piotr, for sharing with our community.
Sure, and thank you, Corrado, for invitation. This is really a great opportunity to me. So I'm going to share my screen. There's lots of material for today. The talk will last 45 minutes plus your questions. I'll be using Mural. You don't need to join the Mural itself. I'll just share my screen. Can you see it? Awesome.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
So my name is Piotr. Next week I'm talking at the XP conference in Amsterdam, and tonight this event is really like the last rehearsal for me to before the conference. So and please forgive any elements that are not yet polished, but I hope to compensate with the content to you. So I've been very lucky to start my career in a small company that really was using XP practices. It was 25 years ago, and I was software engineer back then, and I really enjoyed the company because it was driven by geeks, and the geeks were really exploiting the potential of extreme programming. And this is really what shaped me for my future career. After the following technological path, I became involved in agility and in transformations, of course, in technological companies. And today I wanted to share something that really hit me one day, and I cannot, and it hit me so hard that I need to talk about it, right? I find it difficult to speak publicly, but I'm here not to sell anything, but to get your interest and hopefully get you on board into something really big, in my opinion. So this is not going to be a speech about OpenAI ChatGPT. This is actually not going to even be a talk about any peculiar framework or practice, but it's going to take us from the current reality into the future. So it's more about Horizon 3 and what about the future of work, really. So during all these years, in my years in transformations, I was kind of processing all this information, all the experience that I was exposed to in terms of transforming first small companies and then big companies, and my way of processing was just to write it down, right? So I was publishing mini books, but the last one, like 3 years ago, I published a book on like the 20th anniversary of the Agile Manifesto. I had a strong feeling that it needs to the whole Agile movement needs to jump into some kind of retrospective. So so first I'll talk about the current state, and then I'll take you from the current state. I'll describe what's missing in my opinion, and I'll take you to the better state, to the future state, which is going to be better than the current state. So my observations first. I visualized, for my purposes, the whole history of agility in this worldly map. This is probably, I'm sorry for the proper worldly mappers. This is maybe not super proper use of worldly map, but actually I find this format very useful. And the graph actually starts here on the right-hand side, bottom corner, with the era of doing projects and focusing on on the internal measures of budget and scope and schedule. And throughout the 20 years, we were moving along this upper line here. So we then get fascinated by methods when people rediscovered that actually stuff can be done iteratively, and it took us like the whole decade, and even some people are still engaged very, very deeply in the method aspect of agility today. Then it, of course, opened up the the topic of collaborative cultures, how teams work together to produce better results. This is fascinating human side of agility, and then we discovered that actually, hey, it's all about product. It's not about method. It's not about culture. It's about products and customer satisfaction. So there's a strong development of the techniques and customer focus. And then finally, I think the essence of the agility today is the business agility, where companies compete and optimize in terms of excellent operational excellence, in terms of innovation at scale, and enterprise agility, and so on. So, and the natural question is, what is next, right? But another thing that came out of the retrospective is a bunch of facts. So when I hear what Agile community people are saying, it's basically a couple of messages that repeat themselves, which is Agile has reached the plateau of productivity. So there is now we are in the time of commoditization. All these certifications and stuff. These are all signs of commoditization and reaching the productivity plateau. So, which means that no huge breakthroughs are expected when it comes to the agility, right? And then on the other hand, we observe the selective adoption of Agile. So I think many people in Agile communities say that managements have learned to exploit agility for their own purposes, not necessarily themselves switching to agile mindset, to agile leadership, just exploiting the agility on the team level to reach better results, right? And then of course there's discussion that agile transformations are now so common that they are actually kind of classified, cataloged into a role of a tool that actually improves work efficiency. It's pretty sad, but this is kind of I have a feeling that this is quite a common view in the Agile community. And also looking at the leaders of community, we hear voices that Agile hasn't delivered, Agile needs to be rewidened. This is Dave Snowden, and there's many other voices around these lines. What I see personally, there's like a lot of confusion in the leadership in terms of that they only offer like more kind of method wars. So which method is better, which framework is better, and who was in the room in 2001, right, signing the manifesto and so on and so on. So it's not very like providing the frame for the future. What's brought my attention is actually the two gaps that I observe in companies. So first one is this selective adoption, right? That companies only adopt partial fragments of agility, and even if there is knowledge and understanding in a bigger scale, then some of the knowledge is not applied and companies are not interested in this knowledge, right? So just picking, like I would say, cherry picking in some cases. So there's this implementation gap, and the second gap is the cognitive gap. Like many people, again, in technology, in Agile, expected much more in terms of how companies are run, and myself inclusive. Like I really hoped to have a bigger impact, but it's not happening. So the question is, what's going on? And if we look at the impact of Agile community, I would say it's pretty limited on the level of the teams and mid managers in this area. But when it comes to like serious decisions and how the company is run, the CXO level and the board, there's a huge kind of unexplored potential, and usually we are not invited to this level that often, right? And this is like the existence of these two gaps, and my personal unmatched expectation led me to writing a book, doing some research and writing about it, and now I'm talking about the book. So before we jump into exploring what's going on and why I'm not so satisfied, I definitely would like to spend a minute on appreciating the value of agility, because for me it's I feel so lucky that I started my career like exactly when XP was getting attention and when the Agile Manifesto was signed. So I really witnessed like how the great idea can change companies from within, not from outside, but from within, or some very, very often bottom up. So I'm really thankful, and I just don't want to finish this like saying, okay, so this is Agile, now it's commoditized, so it's not the right ending of this story. For me, it's actually time that we really try to understand what happened, and we should be strengthened by these 2 decades of agility, and really should be able to build on agility and continue our quest to in my case, for creating better companies. So this is how I frame it, and coming to addressing my kind of unmatched expectations. The first reflection is actually sometimes it feels like the Agile community and the Agile movement, we are trying to squeeze a round peg into a square square hole, right? So there's some kind of mismatch, some kind of systemic mismatch that is going on. We'll talk about it. What is it in details? And the other thing, the other kind of metaphor is the that we try to play a game that is actually played, but we play it on a pitch designed for a different game. So for instance, we are trying to play tennis. We are very good at tennis, but actually we are trying to play tennis on the football pitch, right? And in spite of our skills, in spite of all the knowledge that we gathered, we are not achieving great results because there is this unfittedness between our skills and our expertise with the pitch. So this is the famous agent arena mismatch, as John Verwicki calls it. John Verwicki, professor from Toronto, Canada. I strongly recommend his YouTube series. But clearly, for me, there is some kind of mismatch between what Agile offers and how companies apply it, right? So the next question is, what's going on? What kind of mismatch is there in place? And I use the pretty common metaphor of the elephant in the room that nobody sees. But clearly there is some elephant in the room, and our task today is to identify the elephant and why nobody sees the elephant, even if we see all these two adoption gaps. So we'll try to define the elephant, right? And there's the first two thoughts that came into my mind was that, this is like a coaching stuff. We really need to start playing with our perspective, right? So we are now framed by the shape, by how companies are shaped, by how the economical world is shaped, and by how business is shaped. And we just assume it, right? Blindly assume it. So I think that it's time to really try to look from the different perspective, from the outside perspective, right? And the other thing is that we focus on changing the business context, while actually the whole business context is just a part of our reality. So we maybe when we change perspective, we should really take a perspective even wider than business, right? The perspective of the whole humanity, right? And another question is, how do we see what we don't see, right? So the question that really opened this topic up to me in my mind was the question that I now call the great challenge. So the question is like, what happens if we do more of the same things, right, that we have been doing as industry, as business? Because now we are, as Agile community and technology, we are just trying to get things done more efficiently, right? And the question is, where does it lead us to? Where does it lead us to? And you see that that what's missing from this equation of producing better products and being business, achieving business agility level, it's actually missing a part of equation, right? Somehow this equation does not contain the topic of the civilizational debt we are creating. So yes, we are producing better products, we are super business agile, but it comes at a cost, right? And if it comes at a cost, then why don't we make it explicit. What is the cost? And start balancing our decisions based on the full equation, right? So not only better products and business agility, but actually let's take into account the two major components of civilizational debt, namely of course, the ecosystem unsustainability, but also the human disintegrity. What I mean by that, if we go into details of the civilizational debt, it's pretty scary. I don't want to scare you guys. I don't want to sound too depressive, but actually, again, we are in various crises as a humanity. There is, of course, ecosystem unsustainability, which is the most obvious, and this one gets the most attention at the moment from various institutions. And here I again quote Dave Snowden. He says that from year to year, he actually was worried about his grandchildren, but now he's worried about himself in terms of, sustainability of the ecosystem. But also we have this huge topic that's probably going to be even more exposed. We are going to be more exposed to it in the future, is the human disintegrity. And what I mean here is like, all this civilizational anxiety, all the life-work relation, which is completely wrong at the moment, and the feeling of disconnectedness from other people, from the world, especially with the remote working, right? And of course, disconnectedness from the companies, which is common. So I think there's many of us who experience this identity clash, right? So I spent my whole life in business and doing my best and exploiting my skills, but actually when I look at what's going on, at the results of the work, I don't see, I mainly see people worried about what are we doing to the planet and what are we doing to relations, to families, and so on. So so all this needs to be a part of the equation, right? It's not about, again, it's not about products, not about business agility. It's about finding a frame in which the answer to the great challenge question is more constructive, right? So finding way of working and the meaning of work that actually helps us be satisfied with what we do. And so I had a kind of cognitive shock when I realized all this. It was pretty unexpected because I was so happy with all these agile transformations, and really leaping ahead in many places thanks to agility and digital transformations. But again, like, what if we are serving the wrong purpose, right? The optimizing in the wrong direction. What's the value of increasing the civilizational depth even faster? What if what we pursue today is just vanity metrics, right? All these questions, again, they are calling for answers, right? So the one of the starting points in my journey was actually discovering that we are, as business, we are using a pretty often a single loop learning, which is, yes, we react to feedback we are getting from the real world, but actually this is a static model. We are not changing our mental model when it comes to how we make decisions, what is meaningful for us, and we are pretty happy to ignore. In this model, we are happy to keep our mental model unchanged, and this is why we don't talk too much about this civilizational debt, right? And in fact, if we were more open, I would expect that we would be using double loop learning, which is actually, you know, enabling us to update our mental model and thinking about the role of business in societies, and think of the role of the economy, right? Not just about great products and business agility, right? So I did. Maybe it's time to park and hear some comments now, because now we are switching to the forward-looking frame. Any questions so far, and how do you find it? What should I change, or whatever you have to share? Thank you.
Well, I can start if it's okay for the others. I think it is really, really interesting, Piotr. It's a very particular perspective that let me think about, let me say, the reality around me more than myself. I have a question, actually. At the beginning, you mentioned the worldly map, even if it's not exactly a worldly map, but during your speech, you said that Agile today is a commodity, okay, just mapping in the worldly map. And my question is, what are the signals that are telling you that Agile is a commodity? Because let me explain why this question. I think that the word Agile is a commodity, but not the Agile mindset, for example, or a true Agile way of thinking around product management, okay? So again, if you can share your thought, it could be helpful. Thank you.
Yes. So what I mean, this is exactly this gap between what we know, the knowledge, the best practice we gathered throughout these at least 2 decades of Agile, and the level to which this knowledge and experience is adopted in business, right? And I fully agree that in many places, the gap between what we know and how we should work is far from the reality, even in companies that undergo some agile transformation, right? So this is the selective adoption, and in my understanding, I would really like to the whole knowledge to be applied to make companies more agile. But this is exactly the question: why is not happening, right? And why is not happening that it's not adopted? It's just it doesn't stick, right? Some of the knowledge and experience doesn't stick simply in companies. So that's why I'm talking about this systemic kind of mismatch. The round peg and the square hole, right? So. But when I say commodity, it's because I really believe that there's so much knowledge gathered, and on one hand, and there's not so much innovation and breakthroughs in agility. It's more a question about using what we know, rather than creating some new tools or frameworks or approaches.
Yeah, if I could steal a phrase from Michelangelo, knowledge is not understanding.
True. So that's exactly what got my interest.
Can you hear me?
Oh, now I can hear you.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I mean, on this thing about commodity, Agile as a commodity, I don't know if it's worth it, but we had a couple of conversation a few days ago about not actually the concept of a commodity, but the idea of how majority of people do not think about what they can do with the electricity, the energy that we have in our home. So, and this brought me to think about, we use the electricity for everything, and we turn on the computer, but actually it's an incredible energy that we can use wisely, maybe most of the time. Is that the concept that you are, do you want to convey in terms of agile as a commodity? So we have, but we don't use properly as we might probably we might do, and sometimes we keep lights on, right, and we waste the energy in our home.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many techniques and you know, and experience that it's just so easy to get something just from the shelf and use it, and people still don't do it, right? So that's so again, in terms of like, we have a full library of books, great books, but we don't read them in many cases. So so the library is full, so this is commodity, but the adoption is, you know, is disputable. So this is hence the gap I'm talking about.
Thank you.
Any other question from the audience? You can simply unmute and ask your question, if you have. Okay.
Actually, one question or
yeah,
one note
perfect.
from my side. It's Christina speaking. Can you roll back to the previous image, please, with the Albert Einstein quote? Actually, it's just a side note that I really love this quote, and I've used that a lot. And after more than 15 years in software, I realized that this quote is working in chemistry, in physics, in material things. But when you're running the same test case twice, you can get different results. Raise your hands, please, if you have never done that when you're plugging your USB in your computer, plug it in one direction, doesn't work, then flip it, doesn't work, then flip it again, and it works magically, right? And it's the same trial twice, and you get different results. So for some miraculous reasons, sometimes in IT, which is not so bounded by some of the laws of gravity or electricity, or electricity sometimes, but some of those laws are not applying clearly, or not, you know, sometimes the parity bit is dropping to this direction or that direction. So this is not that deterministic as some other laws that Einstein actually applied this for, which I really find it fascinating. And I think that's the beauty of software engineering, that this line of single loop or double loop, and this is why I like that there's a hole in that, because sometimes it's not deterministic. Even if you think it is, sometimes there is unexpected things happen for whatever reason, because we are in a volatile world. Many things can change a little bit. Like you cannot step into the same water twice. And it's true for so many situations. And actually, I would really like to learn a little bit more on what's the message for this for this quote for you in the transformational change, or what is this double loop or single loop learning really means to you, or in your context.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you know, you mentioned the volatility and the whole VUCA world buzzwords, right? We are in the VUCA world. And then also, if you think about it, many people see companies as human systems, myself including. So, and when it comes to human systems, you can actually get different results when doing the same experiment, right? But in this context, what I was referring to is that we try and we repeat our attempts to transform companies to agile. Many years I spent in transforming companies to agility, and we encounter similar problems and we don't know what to do with them, right? And previously I talked about the gaps that I see in the adoption, right? So, and maybe it's time to think about what should we do differently from the from the typical transformation, so that it sticks on the deeper level in the company. That's what I mean.
Thank you.
Michelangelo, you have a raised hand.
Just a quick one, because from my point of view, this slide makes a lot of great sense, because what you named insanity, literally the quote from Einstein, is actually our innate mechanism, self-defense mechanism to survive. So it's embedded in everybody. So the insanity is actually because we find naturally as a human being to behave this way. What makes interesting this diagram, and honestly that's inspiring for a couple of work that I'm doing now, is the fact that in order to enable the arrow pointing down from information feedback to mental model, depending on, well, different theories, but you need to crack our model that we have in mind, or you need to expand it. And this is actually not something that happens naturally. For some people, statistically, it's about 2-3%. It happens naturally, but for majority of people, it doesn't happen. And I think that you point out one very important thing. So what can we do? Because we need to do something. Because if we don't do this, we stuck literally into the first loop, and then we never, move into the second one. Which is part that some leadership programs, advanced leadership programs or coaching does, but this is usually, it's not recognized by the company. And then I think that understanding this is a very, very important point.
Totally agree. Thank you, Michelangelo, for this comment. Yeah, as you know, in human systems, the most difficult change comes to humans themselves, right? And it's the most difficult one. So this is why I'm saying that tonight we'll focus on this change a lot. So you'll see how profound, shifts of paradigm we need to go through in order to break through this, this wall of low adoption of agility, right? So you'll see it in a couple of slides, right? So let's move forward. I suggest to move forward to this. So this was like a summary of my experiences so far and the limitations and the gaps I see. And I decided to start really from the basics. And in my first step, I just draw the postcard from the future, right? It's kind of childish. Sorry for this. I don't mean to be childish, but it contains like a very simple message. Why I go to work every day, right? Why all of us go to work every day. For me, it's as simple as we all try to leave the world better than it is now, right? For me, there's no other meaning of going to work. So if it is so, why don't we make it like our starting point to understand the role of business and how it should really function, right? So this is the first one: leave the world better than it is now. And then when I think about business, it should really be the business and the societies and the human race and humanity. I think it's all interconnected parts of a single system, right? So that if we want to change companies, we need to start on the very, very deep level of understanding of what is our purpose on this planet, right? And what is the role of humankind. And only if we understand the purpose on the deep level, we can think about, the principles of economy and the behaviors of companies, right? But let's imagine tonight that we are able to do this, and let's say we have a magic wand and we say we really want to leave this place better, and we derive the meaning of economy and business from exactly the purpose of humankind. Okay? So that's, and this brought me to drawing this iceberg. I'm sure you know the metaphor of the iceberg. This is one of the most popular metaphors in Agile. And for the purpose, in this case, for the purpose of connecting humankind mission and humankind purpose with behaviors of companies, which I'm not really happy with, I kind of designed the four level iceberg, right? So what we see and observe is business behaviors of companies, but actually what's the underwater part of the iceberg contains 3 levels, and starts from the mental model of humankind. What is the meaning of business, societal meaning of business, and then what's mental model of economy. And we don't talk about it within Agile community, right? We just focus on changing business behaviors so they are more effective, they create better products and so on. We don't derive the change from the lower level of this pyramid, of this iceberg. And I want to, and I, you know, when I was thinking, I said, okay, so maybe we should shape the transformation, the new type of transformation that I'm talking tonight about, from this, based on this iceberg, right? And I defined like 8 transformational stories, which is quite a lot of them. But actually, as you can see, half of them is really considerations on the level of mental model of humankind, right? And then everything is derived from this bottom level of the pyramid. And only if we start our change and this arrow down, as you, Michelangelo, was pointing to changing our mental model and deriving the new type of actions from it, this is the level of our mental model, right? So I would like to take you on the journey. This is like a main course for my speech and my thinking. I would like to take you for the journey through these 8 transformational stories. We will start from the bottom because these are the most cardinal changes that we have to start from. Are you ready, guys? This is quite. Let's try to do a couple of first transformation stories and then hear your feedback. Okay. So I put it for the reference. I put it on one slide so you have the whole context. I'll be talking about the individual stories in more detail. So as with every transformation, as you know, probably we need to start from ourselves, right? When I join a company to transform, I always many times see that managements want to change people, right? And it's not the right way. They need to change themselves first and to become role models for the other guys. And here is the same story. I claim that we should start from ourselves, from us humans, that I would really like to call it the Renaissance of humanity, which means that we need to break through from the selective rationality that we are using at work. What I mean by that selective rationality, we are really, like, companies really focus on exploiting our logical minds, right? Solve problems, problem solvers, exploit the skills, use your logical mind, and that's it. We are not interested in anything else, right? Everything else you need to you need to do at home. We don't need anything else from you in here. So, and of course there are many kinds of intelligence, right? There's this concept of holistic intelligence. So we have rational mind, we have emotional intelligence, we have intuitive intelligence, we have spiritual intelligence. So during my research, I discovered that there is a notion of putting all of these flavors of intelligence together and creating kind of restoring the human intelligence as a whole, as it used to be oneness in terms of like the heart and the mind. They were like 2000 years ago, they were still in fully synchronized and working towards one goal. But now we have, due to the nature of work and technology, we are more and more just narrowing down to exploiting only the logical mind. So this is the first step for me. And applying the holistic mind is, makes us integral internally, and the integrity and stronger us, because we are very weak, very weak condition at the moment. But using holistic intelligence will actually make us capable of pursuing bigger goals, right? So that's a necessary condition for the transformation. The other story number 2 is I call it the dawn of the pursuit era. So I don't know whether you thought about it or not, but the whole humanity exists in an escape frame. We are used to escaping, right? Historically, we were framed into the escape frame. We are escaping from, from poverty, from hunger, from wild animals, from cold, and from illnesses, and so on. And we still do it, right? And still do it. And I challenge this. Do we really need to still be escaping, right? We have great achievements, and maybe maybe it's time to switch to pursuit frame. What I mean by this is, escaping is just about running away from something dangerous. You don't think in terms of where you want to end. You just want to escape. And when it comes to humanity purpose, I would say, let's focus on our purpose, on our goals, what we want to pursue, because we no longer need to run away from anything. We've got internet, we've got agility, we've got AI, we've got pretty reasonable healthcare, and we've got the longest life expectancy ever in history. So maybe it's time to stop thinking in the escape frame, right? And the pursue should be like on the level of what's the purpose of humanity, okay? And you will see that this will build a completely new thinking in terms of what's the meaning of business, right? Story number 3, called the servant revolution. It's again like pretty interesting when it comes to how old is our mindset. Like 600 years ago, Copernicus said, hey, it's actually our globe, the Earth, circling around the sun, not the other way around. And everybody kind of accepted this, but still we as humanity believe that we are the central creation of gods, and central creation because we are most intelligent, right? And if we to test this hypothesis, we should really find a single species on this planet who would say, yes, we actually benefited from the actions of humans, right? And I think it's going to be challenging to find this one species that benefited. Maybe cats, right? But overall, I don't think any species on this earth see us as the greatest creations of gods, right? So again, what I'm saying, let's switch to our thinking to ecosystem centricity, right? We are part of ecosystem, and we, as most intelligent, we need to prove that we, that we deserve to be a part of this ecosystem. And as the most intelligent, our role should change to really maintain, to really take care of our ecosystem rather than exploiting this. We are really behaving like, the teenagers that find out that their parents leave for the evening, and they, decide to throw opportunistic party, right? And when parents are back, they may not recognize their house anymore. So we are very opportunistic just because there is no one and nobody and nothing to stop us exploiting everything that we have around us, right? And then another paradigm shift here is pretty similar, is about the self-interest, right? The self-interest invented by Adam Smith like 200 years ago. And I challenge this because it has proven a dead end. We need to start thinking in terms of enlightened self-interest. So deriving our success from the success of the bigger container we are in, whether it's society, whether it's some kind of tribe, whether it's family or just neighborhood. If like individual success, or in terms of companies, like what's the meaning of having a single company being successful, while on its way to success, the company had to compete 10 other companies, which actually, had to shut down and had to fire all your neighbors. So it doesn't work anymore for me, like self-interest. So I'm saying, let's switch to enlightened self-interest. So let's park here after 3 stories. And again, I would like to hear your comments and your feedback.
Any comments from anyone? Sorry, I the camera off. Okay. Yeah, Piotr, I think we can continue with the other stories. Thank you.
Right. So there's one story left on the level of on humankind purpose, the mental model of humankind. So this is the story of sharing and introducing to public life the new purpose of humankind, because so far we have been very much framed into like country perspective and religion perspective. Everything I know is country based or it's religion based, and there are clear borders that are crossing the goals of countries and the goals of religions. And I say, no, I believe that our kids at schools should be learning the same anthem. They should be using the same flag, and they should be really thinking in terms of the purpose of humanity rather than any kind of local country goals, right? And it's not existent. We don't have institutions that talk about we don't about this shared goal. We don't have presidents talking about this. We don't have any institutions that actually would be the owner of the purpose of humankind. Actually, I dare to challenge you and say there is no purpose of humankind at the moment used, right? So we are completely lost. We are again in the escape frame, and in the escape frame we didn't need any kind of purpose, right? We just needed to escape. Now I would like to have a purpose, and I would like to have it installed as shared purpose across the globe. Right. So this was like the 4 building blocks that we need to think about the meaning of business. Okay. I think we are now ready to think about the meaning of business. So we switch to story number 5. So what is this societal meaning of business? What role should business play in societies? And as you can think, the business is now the vehicle of escape, right? It helps us earn money. It helps us grow GPD, in gross domestic product, and it helps us generate profit. And historically, historically, apparently there is nothing wrong with this frame, because historically these characteristics, they proved to be causally correlated with success, with enriching societies, and with providing higher standards of life, and providing longer lives. But actually, again, it's time to switch to business serving the purpose of humanity, right? It's not about escaping. We are going to go somewhere together and create and leave this world a better place. So this story, as simple as that. Let's imagine that we have business that's role is to help us achieve our goal. Okay. And when we think about the economy, again, as a consequence of the societal meaning of business, the role of economy changes too, and we kind of invert the direction of the relation. We are not here to satisfy needs of companies. We are not here. Societies are not here to provide educated personnel for companies, but actually it's the other way around. The companies are in service for societies, right? And in service to individuals, to help us achieve our full potential, to help us live fulfilled lives, and leave this place a better place. There is story number 7, which says about the new mental model of companies. Of course, it needs to be derived from the new principles of the economy. But as you know, companies are now treated as ways of organizing to achieve goals that are not achievable by individuals. And I claim, again, this is not enough. This is not sufficient anymore. Companies should be vehicles to fulfilling societal meaning of business. What it means. There is an Italian professor who is my guru, and Stefano Zamani, and he says that originally companies were created as agents of transformations of the reality they were embedded in. So the natural role of companies was to hear societies and help them fulfill their needs, right? And this relation is non-existent anymore because of the narrowing down to return of investment and profit making, like the profit making machinery as a meaning of companies. While this relation should be again restored, so there should be 3 players actually in this equation. So there should be societies who own business and who own the purpose, and then there should be governments and businesses and companies who actually help fulfill what is expected from them by societies, right? So in this case, we assume that leaving this place better than it is now, and societies should be in a position to actually impose their purpose onto governments and onto companies, right? and here we are, and you know, after going through all these 7 layers of the iceberg, creating I call it the integral economy model. Story number 8 is obvious. As the new business behaviors will simply be a result of going through this mental change and the paradigm shifts described in the transformation stories. So what I'm expecting is really, you know, to see companies behaving in the direction of reducing the civilizational debt, of reducing the ecosystem issues, and reducing and restoring human integrity, and really serving us to be fulfilled as humans. And this is, for me, this transformation is really super important, and it feels natural, it feels fulfilling, it feels like it restores and addresses issues that were not addressed by digital transformations, and the issues that were not addressed by agile transformations. It really brings humanity and the purpose as a cardinal level of mindset into companies, into doing business, and into our daily lives. And thanks to this, I believe we could you know, park the topic of work-life balance, for instance, and we could actually be proud of our contribution to this world, right? And if we want to now, of course, every hypothesis needs to be sanity checked, so tested. So I leave it to you to apply the great challenge question to this new mental frame. So in this new mental frame, if we imagine, if we were able to do more of this, leaving the world a better place, and based on this integral economy model, where would it lead us to? And I believe this would lead us to really better lives for all of us, right? And of course, the impact of the transformation, it's absolutely orders of magnitude bigger than the impact of you know, optimizing efficiency of operations in companies. And so, responding to the cognitive shock that I presented at the beginning, I believe there is nothing wrong with agility or teal or beyond agile. There's nothing wrong with what we're doing. It's we are encountering the agent arena unfittedness, which is a sign that actually, as agile community, we need to do more of this. This is all necessary, but actually it's not sufficient to create to you know, to close the gaps of our expectations. And again, so this is, as a result, I repeated that we are not here to create better products or higher business agility. We are here really to leave this planet a better place, right? And so we just simply should align our efforts, and to align our efforts, we need to really update our mental model and use double loop learning to really feed the new mental model into our daily decisions and reacting to the feedback and making better decisions, right? This is it. I will skip this one. This is probably, I think this is too much. But so again, let's park here. I'm really curious how you find it. Sounds like I
will start.
Exhausted you.
Yeah, a little bit. If I can start, my feedback is all of these concepts are very well packed, and then some of them are really interesting, and I found quite new the overall package, or the idea how you put together all this content. A little bit difficult to follow sometimes on something, and then it was particularly the stories that I struggled a little bit at the beginning in understanding the purpose of the story, but then I realized the meaning behind why you are telling the stories, and then to me makes sense. So the content is great, I think. Maybe a little bit some clarity might be probably better somewhere, but yeah, in general I like the content.
Thank you. I'll reach out for more feedback, Michelangelo, if you don't mind. So maybe, yeah. How would you react if you saw this in Amsterdam? Mark, I saw you for a while.
Yeah, I agree in concept with what you're saying. In the US, it's more than just religion and nationality. There's all kinds of splinter groups, and it's probably worse now than it's ever been in my life. So the challenge is that if situations were black and white, then I can agree that you can drive a lot of this through business, but you're seeing it now where there are so many splinter groups, and so many different perspectives around social issues that companies find themselves stuck in the middle, where if you go left, half the people love you, half the people hate you. If you go right, half the people love you, half the people hate you. You go straight, nobody loves you. So it's really hard as a business to navigate these waters. There are some things that you clearly, for instance, not polluting the environment unnecessarily, right? I mean, every company does have a footprint from an energy and a pollution standpoint, because they do things, and unfortunately sometimes that creates waste and uses energy. But to minimize that, I think most people would agree is a good cause. But there are a lot of other issues that are viewed differently, and the degree to which you tackle them is viewed as either being acceptable or irresponsible. And I think it's a real challenge when businesses try to do this, to understand how they're serving their constituency the best, given the diversity of the constituents. And the other thing too is you can vote out elected officials. I can't vote out the CEO of a company. So if they have a certain point of view, the only option I have is to no longer buy their product if I don't agree with it, or don't support it, or don't like it.
Yeah, this is, I agree. We have some kind of voting mechanism by buying products of companies that we like.
But that assumes you can find a substitute, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't. Especially like if it's a medical product or a food product or something like that. You're stuck having to support an organization that you disagree with their political stances.
Yeah, I think in this area, how I was saying that what I would really like to happen is to really make this civilizational debt explicit, right? In just a part of the equation. And for some reason we are hiding this too deeply. And of course there's United Nations that have these sustainability goals and so on. But it's still not present enough. Of course we can start educating our people, our kids at schools to a greater extent, but this narrowing down that has happened during last 50 years to just the return of invested capital, and this is really narrowed down frame, and we should really get rid of this frame and see the whole picture.
Yeah, I agree that there has to be something broader than that, because you have to look at your constituents and you want to make sure you don't damage them in the process of trying to serve them. But you have to be judicious about which situations you go after, because some things are not black and white. Some things are very gray, and you get stuck in the middle, and it's unclear that you're really helping your constituents. You're just creating more divisiveness.
Right.
Another thing that brought me to think about your work was recently I attended a conference in my country, in Italy, and there is this movement which is not a political movement, and this movement tried to publish a manifesto, which translated is about new humanity, or kind of follow different principles that, in short, is we are now more evolved than just simply believe in political party or believing in economic models, which, by the way, are, of course, decided upfront by major constituents or major companies in the world, and then accepted because, of course, they are convenient to most of them. So, in short, I don't know how many people signed the manifesto, and then you might want to translate it in English, because I think nowadays browser web can translate everything, but I'll put in a chat. And
awesome.
I found it there are some interesting content inside. Maybe it wouldn't be easy for anyone to translate the content in English, so just have a look about that.
While I was doing the research, indeed, there's plenty of initiatives going on. But one thing that why I think they're not going to be very successful is because we still tend to separate and narrow down the business and the companies to just one item: the GDP, gross domestic product, and the growth mindset, the growth economy, and so on and so on. And we kind of delegate. Companies have managed to delegate, all the difficult questions to governments, and just outside of their scope, and they are only talking and understanding the language of profit, which is pretty bad. The current model is that it is governments who need to impose good behaviors on companies from outside, right? And I'm talking about reverting this, because I would like to create companies which are good from within and which behave properly from within, not waiting for any external institution to force them by regulations to behave better. And this is weird, because I only meet good people and great people in companies. Everybody wants to have positive impact, but how their work and efforts are framed in terms of economical entity, all these efforts are then reduced to making profit, right? And as long as possible, exploiting what they can exploit. So this is really not satisfactory to me.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's really true anymore. This whole ESG movement was really stimulated because there was a desire to think bigger than just return on investment, right?
Yeah, but it's still I really much agree very much appreciate the ESG, but still, this is like external intervention on business, right? So this is again following like this pattern that without external interventions, companies will not behave, right? And I would like to them to
No,
behave.
a lot of companies are adopting ESG because if nothing else, they're starting to lose a lot of potential investors. A lot of people are looking for, and I know a lot of ESG companies were more talk than action, but even that is starting to change because people are learning to look under the covers and say, what are you really doing in these areas? And how, and is it really a significant effort? They're really looking a lot more. I think if you look at some of the bigger companies, they're much more sensitive to how they're being perceived. And like I said, sometimes it's caused overreactions and it's caused a lot of splintering where they've kind of been damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I think for the most part, you're starting to see that change. Is it changing fast enough? No, probably not, but it's starting to change. I mean, that's just my point of view.
Yeah, many people have lots of hope around ESG, including myself. I just when I spotted this systemic issue of like, you know, the framing of intervention from outside, I started thinking about it, to what extent it may be successful. But yeah, we'll see, and we need more such initiatives. Definitely would be helpful if companies wouldn't wait for external regulations to behave, right? After all, you know, as I said, it's obvious for every employee that they should behave, but for some reason they don't. But yeah, thank you, Mark.
Okay, is there any other question or someone who wants to talk? Corrado just left for a second and asked me to be the host for tonight. So, Piotr, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm actually done. One of the things I had for like a final message is something that I also find quite funny. It's like a humble request to all of you, that whichever community you come from, whether it's agile, technological, you know, coaching or organizational design, we should work as a, you know, in synergy and share ideas and meet more often, because I'm talking about this material at various groups, and they are very I would say siloed, right? We coach in companies, we coach that we're destroying silos, we put people together, and when it comes to meetup structure, it's pretty much siloed, right? So I really use this chance to invite you to collaborate more cross silo and avoid silo ideologies. But other than that, I really appreciate your feedback and your comments. Thank you for this opportunity for me. So yeah, hope to speak in the future. Thank you.
And thank you very much, actually, Piotr. Thank you very much for coming. And yes, and thank you to Corrado, as usual, because this meetup is rich of good people and a lot of good speakers like you. So we hope to see you soon, and I wish you all the best for for the speech at XP. And thank you everyone for coming tonight.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you for the insightful session. Have a good speech. Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Take care. Cheers.